When I was contacted by the Hispanic Business Students Association at Onsetti about this award, it was asked about accepting it, and of course I was delighted. In fact, it reminded me of when I got the acceptance letter from the admissions office for this school. You know, it was both communications were typically very understated and completely in contrast to my own reactions, right? I was absolutely overjoyed. What a wonderful recognition this is. Thank you very much. But I can't let another moment pass without recognizing the GSB for its ongoing work. I don't understand the recipe for staying on top of business education the way the GSB has for year after year. But I do read the communications from the school and in the press, and I've acquired an appreciation for the leadership that's needed and that's both required and provided by the administration, by the faculty, so that the school continues to excel in an ever-changing and always competitive environment. The reason that's important to me is that when I attended the business school, it provided me with a transforming experience, and I'm not overstating it. I want other students to have that same experience. It taught me that much of what I thought was beyond me was actually quite reachable, because it was comprehensible. That was a message I needed to hear, and for that I thank the GSB. It provided me with a wonderful learning environment with excellent faculty and incredible peers. Of course, I'd like to also recognize and thank my mom. I wish she were alive to see that her, despite all her very justified worrying about me, that I'm receiving this incredible recognition. My mother mastered the marketing concept of staying on brand with a simple, clear message, namely, stay in school and do something with yourself. And sometimes I feel she kind of oversaturated the airwaves with it, but she drove home the point. She herself barely finished high school, and my dad might have finished 5th grade, and it was either despite this or because of it, but she knew that education was a way to improve one's life, and she passed that wisdom on to me. So, thanks, Mom. My wife Irma deserves the credit for this award, though. She puts up with all the ridiculous demands of what I do. In addition to tolerating this and being supportive through it all, she's given us 2 wonderful kids, Jacob and Julianne. And one of her best gifts to them has been a consistent enthusiasm for life in all its surprises. My family has been a boundless source of energy and motivation. But indulge me, if you will, for a few minutes about my story. After business school, I went through a process somewhat akin to what a writer calls finding my voice, or at least the businessman's equivalent. I worked for RCA and General Electric, and those provided some very interesting and very meaty experiences in the world of big corporations. I was at my first job in RCA's corporate headquarters for less than 3 months when Tom Brokaw told me on the NBC Evening News that Neutron Jack and General Electric had just acquired RCA. My survival instincts kicked in at that point, and I figured that the corporate treasury of an acquired company is probably not the right place to be. Excuse me. I found a job with RCA Records in Mexico City, thinking to myself, Jack is probably going to be busy on some pretty big integration issues for a while. He won't get around to the little music business in Mexico City for a while. So I arrived in Mexico City. A month or so passed, and Jack had a press conference in New York in order to quiet the steady stream of speculation that was going on that GE had just acquired RCA in order to jettison all the other brands and just end up with NBC. His message was, we've looked closely at all of RCA's businesses and see a wonderful fit with all of them, except for the music business. We don't see the record business as one that fits with GE's long-term plans. So my survival instincts kicked in again, but I think it had more to do with my luck in having a great RCA mentor who made a good move over to GE and found me an excellent job. I was able to find a job in the belly of the beast, if you will, the corporate headquarters at GE, working as a financial analyst for one of the two vice chairmen who, together with Jack, ran the company. So I had the good fortune to watch the development of corporate policy at one of the truly great companies in America and witness the process of leadership actually transform a company and a culture made up of 300,000 separate and distinct individuals, their employees. But back to the theme of finding my voice. After 3 years at GE's corporate headquarters, I was almost 5 years out of business school. I had learned that I was probably not going to make my mark in that environment. It's a truism that works, that one will only do their best if they feel passionate about what it is that they're doing. I needed to see some tangible results for my efforts, and frankly, I didn't feel that I was getting that there. And even though I hadn't done this before, I decided that what I truly wanted to do was to build businesses and create jobs. And I felt that despite the best recruiting efforts of the GSB and other great business schools, there still weren't enough Hispanic MBAs out there bringing business schools to bear on services to the Hispanic population. Based on this, I decided that there were opportunities back home in Los Angeles and that was where I would go. So I took the time to drive from Fairfield, Connecticut to Los Angeles. During the drive, I reflected on a couple of sage bits of advice that resonated when I first heard them at the GSB and resonate for me still. On orientation day, on my first day at the business school, Aisha Kenmore, who was the head of the Career Center, spoke to the entering first years about careers, summer internships, and placement after the second year. And during the course of her presentation, she advised us, never underestimate the power of serendipity in your careers. I drew some confidence from this, and since I was driving to Los Angeles with probably no more than a couple of good leads for some short-term consulting, the confidence was a good companion for the road. And there was also Jack McDonald's memorable reassurance to me that I've never heard of a Stanford MBA die of starvation. So. As it turned out, my consulting work was fruitful, and shortly after arriving, I co-founded Eldorado Communications in 1991 with the plan of acquiring underdeveloped major market radio stations and programming them with Spanish language entertainment. Believe it or not, at one time there was actually a dearth of Spanish language radio stations. In Los Angeles, at the time, there were only 2 Spanish language FMs. Now there are 8. But the best part of the plan was that the Federal Communication Commission at the time limited the number of stations that a single operator could have to just 1 FM and 1 AM in a market. So that we weren't going to be bidding against deep-pocketed operators, since most of them were already maxed out in the major markets. At any rate, what a change. I'd gone from all the business resources in the world at General Electric's corporate headquarters to financing a startup with my savings, the contents of my 401k, and all the credit card debt I could muster. My partner and I worked day and night for 2 years, unencumbered by salaries, trying to raise money and find deals. We spent months trying to buy stations out of bankruptcy, out of divorce court, bringing nothing more than an idea of conviction and persistence. For example, our second acquisition, great story. It was an FM station in Houston. Our acquisition of it was a result of a year's work with Ross Perot, a Texas bank that had gone into receivership, a former governor of Texas, and helping them settle their differences. Perot had guaranteed the governor's purchase of the radio station. The station went under. The bank hit Perot's letter of credit, and then the bank went under, and then Perot sued the governor, and so on. Well, we got in on this deal very early on, and we rode the whole nasty mess through to the end. And through the persistence, we finally got the deal. 2 years after starting Eldorado, we closed on our first acquisition. 4 months later, we were on the air. Though my prior radio experience was limited to rock, classical music, I felt I was truly in my element. I knew nothing about radio, but I picked up what I needed. By the way, I wish I could say that this business plan was my idea, but I really have to thank a very bright operator in Tom Castro, who was the other co-founder, and again to our good luck in finding a lot of these deals. We bought a few stations for great prices before the FCC closed the window on us by allowing almost unlimited consolidation in the late 1990s. The bad news was that we could no longer buy stations at competitive prices, not with the high price capital which we had access to, and at least not for the prices that the big players were now willing to pay. But the good news was that we had bought a few stations very cheaply, and all of our investors made out very nicely. So I consulted for a few years after that, working on turnaround situations and some private equity deals focused primarily again on minority media. But I got antsy and anxious to get back into it and create another company. So the next adventure, and I think that's a pretty good summary, was a very different sort of opportunity. It was similar in that I met another smart operator, and that was in the person of Jeff Valdez. He had devoted years to developing and funding a business plan around an English language digital television network designed to serve the acculturated, the assimilated Latino market. At El Dorado, we had been serving acculturated Latinos for many years with our Tejano radio stations. And I understood the variety of ways that Latinos consume media in this country. Our Tejano stations, for instance, served a population that tended to be English dominant, but liked hearing familiar Spanish words and phrases mixed in with English DJ chatter, hence the term Spanglish. So I knew that many Latinos are not served by a homogeneous mix of Spanish ballads and telenovelas on television. The Hispanic population is just as varied as the rest of the general market population in their tastes. So this seems obvious, but I believe there's still a lot of opportunities out there for people that understand this. As Latinos grow up in the school system in the United States, they tend to become English dominant, and they consume media along the same lines. This group is growing faster than the Spanish dominant immigrants. And they needed a television network that they could think of as their own. To get back to the story, though, I met Jeff as he was trying to close on a $60 million funding. That was going to be the launch funding for the network. 6 weeks after I agreed to work with Jeff is a very frugal guy, so I was working on the come at this point. But we closed on some bridge funding to get on the air. We hired staff, acquired and installed all the different kinds of programming and financial systems needed. We built sets, we hung lights, we started shooting 3 original shows at breakneck speed, and 59 days later we debuted in 8 million homes across the country. The investors liked what they saw. They funded the rest of the startup money a couple of weeks later. So the programming has been innovative. The station has received many awards despite the obvious financial constraints of a startup. For instance, our entire production budget is less than what the cast of ER earns in a single episode. Nevertheless, the New York Times thought enough of our reality show, Urban Jungle, to give it a front-page story of its own on the Friday entertainment section. CTV has also put together its own skit comedy, a la Saturday Night Live, and that'll be debuting in this month. And first-rate cast. I think I only wish CTV were in more homes so that more people could see it. Though I recently resigned as Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, the experience with CTV has been very rewarding in a lot of different ways. I had the satisfaction of launching and seeing it through its first 2 years. But also, and more importantly, I played a role in putting English language programming on the air where Latinos can see a positive portrayal of the multicultural mix that this country is becoming. They can see themselves portrayed in a balanced way as more than just maids, gardeners, and drug dealers. I take a lot of pride in that and in helping Jeff fulfill his vision. So the media landscape continues to change rapidly. A media analyst once told me that the CTV could very likely be the last of the independent television networks. Consolidation seems to have caught up with digital networks, just like in the radio business when I was acquiring radio stations. So maybe the next opportunities to serve the Latino marketplace will be in digital media. I don't know. The one thing that is clear is that it's a very exciting time in the media business. American business has taken notice of the Latino market, and they're busy trying to figure out how to capture its attention. It'll take drive and creativity, but the market is available and anxious to be reached. So thank you so much for this award. Thank you for being here, and have a nice evening. Thanks.